Jim Carroll was born July 23, 1900, to Peter and Martha Carroll in Bear Creek, Montana. When he was only 12, his mother passed away, and he was raised by his father, brothers, and sisters. His formal education was only through the 9th grade. In 1929, Jim married Rosalie Slagland. They had 3 daughters, Millie, Rosalie Ruth, and Effie. Jim served in the Navy in World War I and then worked in the coal mines. Later, Jim was employed by the Coast and Geodetic Survey in Alaska, then returned to Sheridan to join Carroll's furniture store. He later opened his own store in Gillette in 1928. Jim always felt he had a voice for radio, so after 6 years in the furniture business, he headed to Albuquerque to begin his radio career. Meanwhile, in 1934, Jim's brother Bob, who owned and operated the family furniture store, started radio station KWYO, the second radio station in Wyoming. The station operated on the mezzanine of Carroll's furniture. In 1939, Jim returned to Sheridan to work for the station, and in 1942 took over the management of KWYO. In 1949, along with Don Tannehill, Jim bought KWYO. Radio was Jim's personal sounding board. If there was one word that could describe Jim Carroll's management of KWYO radio and Jim's life, it was community. This, plus a spirit of giving, extended his reach beyond the airwaves and into the lives of others. Jim truly was a being of public service. Just a few of the many community events Jim was involved included Whitney Benefits, J.C.'s, March of Dimes, the Chamber of Commerce. He was president of the Lions Club and All-American Indian Days. Sheridan legislator John Patton remembers Jim's commitment to community service.
A warm, friendly, always a smile on his face kind of a guy, and really loved the community. And so his a lot of things, just like you're picking up where he left off, being a community service. Community-wise, we had a JC Day, and he took the radio station, and he and Don together would work with the leadership of the JC organization, and you had a JC Day where the radio station was turned over completely. Now, this was KWYO. This was before KROE became merged with KWYO. And so we would sell the advertising and whatnot. All the money, the advertising that we got went into the JC coffers to try and do their good works.
Jim suffered on a daily basis because of his severe rheumatoid arthritis. Rosalie Ruth remembers traveling with her dad to help set up the equipment for his play-by-play broadcast of the Sheridan Bronx.
The fondest part was Dad would come in and he'd say, well, let's go. And Mom would say, no. And I'd say, oh, please, please, please. And so we went. The furthest part we went was Evanston and Casper. And then we'd go there, and sometimes Dad would have somebody else with him, but I don't remember who it was. And then he'd take these heavy, heavy suitcases in. They had a table there. Dad would set up these heavy suitcases, and I'd have to run with the wires and find outlets for them and put them in, and then by then we'd come back, and then Daddy would line up the papers for me, and I'd try to keep score, but I was too busy watching the games.
Jim turned over his play-by-play duties to Jim Spracklin, who worked for KWYO until he retired in the 1980s, and whose mother had started working as the bookkeeper in the 1930s. Jim tells about Jim's business operation philosophy and how it was merged back into the community.
Yeah, we got Lost Dogs on the air, give them 3 spots for $3, and they came up and paid cash for them. And so in my booking knowledge, I thought, well, that's just kind of a little amount coming in every week, 4 or 5 of them a week and so forth. Why don't I just put that in a drawer, and we'll use it to buy coffee for everybody, and because we have to do that all the time. And I approached Jim with the idea, and he said, that's station income, isn't it? And I said, yes, sure is. He said, what do we do with station income? And I said, well, one of the things that you do, that I know about, is you give 10% to the Lord. And he said, that's right.
So, as per Jim's policy, Sprackland would take the first 10% of all their income and donate it to one of the churches in town. They'd rotate giving money each month to a different church, or perhaps someone in need. Daughter Effie on how she thinks her dad would like to be remembered.
I know that my dad's legacy to us all would be that his priority in his life would be first and foremost known as loving and serving the Lord with his whole heart. Then loving his wife, our mother, family, friends, and community, including the radio and TV.
Longtime residents of Sheridan have many fond memories of Jim. Judy Taylor on her inspiration for being Mrs. Claus in Sheridan for over 20 years.
As a child in the late 40s and 50s, radio was our best source of entertainment when we weren't playing outside. Jim Carroll was the voice we all knew, except when he was Santa. For some reason, we did not recognize his voice because we knew it was Santa Claus by shortwave radio all the way from the North Pole. We all wrote letters and placed them in a special mailbox at the Sheridan Commercial Company. Then we listened every day after school to hear Santa read our letters and those of our friends. When I got into radio 35 years later, Jim Carroll was the inspiration for another show with Mrs. Claus, reading letters and stories and elves singing Christmas songs.
Rancher Bud Geyer remembers someone calling into Jim's program to say they'd broken the Pittman drive shaft on their mower and needed one quick. Another caller said they had one and would put it out by their mailbox. Tom Tynan remembers one story Jim loved to tell on himself. On a trip to California, Jim and his wife, Rosalie, ran into some bad weather going over one of the mountain passes. So they had to go back to the last town they passed through to have a service station put on the chains, which Jim couldn't do because of his arthritis. When they got over the pass and past the snow, they had to take the chains off. But again, because of his arthritis, Jim couldn't do it. So he stood by the car while Rosalie got down on the ground and took the chains off. As Jim stood and watched Rosalie, drivers of other cars would honk at Jim and give him a thumbs up as they drove by. A few stories that show the type of personality Jim had. One other such story related to disappearing pencils in the office. John Patton tells the story.
One good story with Jim Sprackland was Sprackland would, as he walked around the offices up there, that was when it was above Stevens Freiberger, Sprackland had a habit of picking up pencils. So they ordered a gross of pencils, and instead of having on it KWYO, it had on it, "Put it back, Sprack."
Everyone in town had a pencil with the saying, "Put it back, Sprack." Jim was the first president of the Wyoming Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters and a member of the Pioneer Broadcasters League. Radio has many voices, and Jim was one that drew praise as well as critic. It was a voice of urgency, sincerity, and sensitivity. Jim did a number of programs that were uniquely his, such as Little Nippers, giving local individuals the opportunity to appear live on the radio to showcase their talent, Sunrise Salute, Man About Town, and Seed for Thought.
Here's seed for thought I cast your way, hoping it will find good ground, spring up and bear fruit 100-fold in your heart, in your soul, and in your mind. And now our poem for today. The poem titled The Best Memory System. Forget each kindness that you do as soon as you have done it. Forget the praise that falls on you the moment you have won it. Forget the slander that you hear before you can repeat it. Forget each slight, each spite, each sneer, wherever you may meet it. Remember every kindness done to you, whate'er its measure. Remember, praise by others won, and pass it on. And we do hope that you enjoyed it, and that you'll be listening again for Seed for Thought every morning at 6:55.
Sheridan and broadcasting truly benefited from the voice and the giving spirit of Jim Carroll. Ladies and gentlemen, the Wyoming Association of Broadcasters is pleased to induct Jim Carroll into the Hall of Fame class of 2010.